Most people will never be clever, not because they aren't smart enough, but because they confuse the two things their entire life and spent decades developing the wrong one. Smart is what school measures. Smart is scores and recall and the ability to reproduce what someone else already figured out. Smart is useful. Smart gets you in the room. But clever, real cleverness, the kind that makes people slightly nervous around you, the kind that makes things happen that shouldn't be able to happen given your resources, your position, your access, that's an entirely different animal. And nobody teaches it. Nobody grades it. Nobody even talks about it honestly, because the people who have it would rather you didn't. Niccolo Machiavelli had it, and he was so precise in documenting how it works that 500 years later, his name is still used as an adjective for a specific kind of dangerously effective thinking that most people can't quite define, but immediately recognize when they're on the receiving end of it. What I'm about to walk you through are 11 principles extracted from Machiavelli's thinking that form a complete blueprint for developing this quality. Not cleverness as a party trick. Not cleverness as manipulation for its own sake. Cleverness as a fundamental upgrade to how you process reality, navigate people, and position yourself in any environment you operate in. This is going to get uncomfortable in places. Good. Comfortable thinking produces predictable results. Let's begin. Principle 1. See the world as it is, not as you were taught it should be. This sounds almost insultingly simple until you actually try to do it consistently and discover how violently your own mind resists it. We are all, without exception, operating inside a picture of the world that was handed to us before we were old enough to evaluate it. A picture assembled from the beliefs of our parents, the incentives of our education system, the values of the culture we grew up inside, and the specific experiences that happened to land hardest in our formative years. That picture feels like reality. It isn't. It's a map. And like any map, it has errors, outdated information, and entire territories it simply doesn't include. Machiavelli's entire intellectual project began with one decision: to look at political reality as it actually functioned, rather than as centuries of received wisdom said it should function. What he saw when he did that was so different from the official picture that the book he wrote about it got banned, burned, and placed on the Catholic Church's index of forbidden texts. Not because it was wrong, because it was right in ways that were profoundly inconvenient for people who benefited from everyone else believing the official picture. The first move toward dangerous cleverness is developing the habit of asking, not what am I supposed to think about this, but what is actually true about this when I look at it directly. These are not always different questions. Sometimes the received wisdom is accurate, but you will never know which times those are until you've developed the practice of checking rather than assuming. Most people never check. They inherit a map and spend their entire lives navigating by it, wondering why they keep arriving at destinations they didn't choose. Principle 2. Understand that people are moved by interest, not by argument. This one will save you an enormous amount of wasted energy if you actually internalize it. Machiavelli observed, with the kind of calm that only comes from watching enough human behavior to stop being surprised by it, that people almost never change their position because of logic. They change their position when their interests shift, when the cost-benefit calculation changes, when what they stand to gain or lose from a particular belief or behavior changes enough to make movement feel worth it. This doesn't mean people are purely selfish in some crude sense. Interests include emotional ones. Interests include identity, belonging, status, the need to feel consistent with who they believe themselves to be. But those are still interests. They're still the actual engine-driving behavior, regardless of what the person tells you, and often regardless of what they tell themselves. The practically clever person stops trying to win arguments and starts asking a different question entirely. Not, how do I prove I'm right? But but what would have to be true about this person's interests for my position to become the one they want to adopt? That reframe alone changes everything about how you communicate, how you negotiate, how you lead, and how you resolve conflict. You are not in the business of being right. You are in the business of being effective. And effectiveness with humans almost always runs through their interests, not through your logic. Before we go further, I need to say something, and I'm going to say it straight. YouTube recently stripped away every way I could monetize my work because they like to reward flashy cuts and dopamine hits over anything that actually makes you think. So I left. Not completely, but the real work, the slow, methodical, raw version of everything I do here, lives on Patreon now, where no algorithm decides what's too honest to show you, where I don't have to make philosophy suitable for an insurance ad. So click the link in the description or the pinned comment and join the movement. Principle 3. Never reveal the full extent of your capability. There's a specific kind of power that lives in the gap between what people think you can do and what you can actually do. Machiavelli understood this gap as strategic real estate. The wider it is, the more options you have. The moment someone has fully mapped your capabilities, they can plan around them. They can prepare for you. They can calculate exactly what you're able to bring to bear and position themselves accordingly. But when they're not sure, when they sense there might be more there than they've seen, that uncertainty changes how they behave around you. It introduces a caution, a deference, a slight hesitation before they act against you that can be worth more than any specific capability you actually possess. This isn't about being deceptive in a way that damages trust. It's about understanding that not everything needs to be demonstrated and not every strength needs to be announced. The person who walks into every room and immediately establishes exactly what they know and what they can do has handed away something valuable for nothing in return. Let people wonder. Let them suspect there's more. Let the gap work for you. Principle 4. Move in silence, especially when it matters most. Machiavelli was almost obsessive on this point, and the reason becomes obvious when you trace the specific failures he was analyzing. Rulers who announced their intentions in advance gave their opposition the one thing it needed most, which was time to prepare. Time to build counter-alliances, time to shore up defenses, time to position against the coming move. The announcement itself was what made the move fail, not the move. There is a particular modern version of this failure that is worth naming directly because it's everywhere. It's the person who talks extensively about what they're going to do as a substitute for actually doing it. The announcement creates a small social reward, attention, admiration, the feeling of being taken seriously, and that reward bleeds off enough of the psychological pressure that the actual execution never quite happens with full force. You've already gotten some of what you wanted from saying you were going to do the thing. Doing the thing becomes less urgent. Machiavelli would find this baffling and then immediately recognize it as a structural weakness to exploit in others. Do the thing. Then talk about it if you must.